Hello and welcome to the News at 7, where we get to the heart of the day's stories and communities across Scotland. Tonight, jail for a Romanian grooming gang. They've been handed lengthy sentences for raping and sexually abusing 10 women in flats across Dundee. A committee of MPs finds billions of pounds of taxpayers' money has been squandered on asylum accommodation. We'll ask one of them what's gone wrong. We will, of course, have all the sport with Lewis. What have you got for us tonight, Lewis?
Well, Amy, after Hearts moved 8 points clear at the summit of the Premiership, we'll discuss how well equipped they are to end a 65-year wait to win the Scottish top flight.
And we will hear from both sides of the argument as beavers are released into the wild in the North West Highlands. Hello, I'm Amy Irons and welcome to the News at 7. A gang who groomed and sexually exploited 10 vulnerable women in Dundee have been jailed today. The victims, aged between 16 and 30, were given alcohol and drugs, including crack cocaine. Some of the women were trafficked into prostitution in brothels across the city. The 4 men and 1 woman jailed are from Romania. Judge Lord Scott praised the courage of victims in coming forward to report the crimes. Alexandra Mackenzie has more, and just a warning that you may find some parts of this report distressing.
The ringleader of the gang, Marian Kumpansoyo, known as Mario, was described as a winking, smirking pimp. He was sentenced to 24 years after being found guilty of 15 charges, including 10 of rape. The judge said that he had never dealt with a case involving so many charges of rape against so many different women. He told Mario that if he was sentenced separately for each of his convictions, he would be going to jail for more than 100 years. The abuse was uncovered following a police operation targeting suspected human traffickers in Dundee. Between 2021 and 2022, the gang plied the women with drugs and forced them to have sex. The gang members were sentenced to a total of 74 years. Christian Urlachanu was told he was a significant risk to women. The one female member, Alexandra Begonia, cried as she was given 8 years in jail. The judge said they showed little or no remorse.
Each of you participated in the serious sexual abuse and exploitation of vulnerable and mostly young women. You exacerbated their vulnerabilities and then proceeded to exploit them for your own sexual gratification and whims.
All 5 are expected to be deported after serving their sentences. A final decision will be made by the Home Office.
Alexandra Mackenzie reporting for us there. Well, our reporter Graham Ogston spoke to Jenna Lawrence from Dundee Women's Hub about the sentencing of the gang.
Jenna, can you first of all just tell me what your reaction is to these sentences?
So we are very pleased with the outcome from the sentencing today. We hope that sends a really strong message that sexual exploitation and trafficking will not be tolerated. I would also, along with the judge, like to praise the women who took part, and even though despite their vulnerabilities and what they've had going on and the long-lasting impact of the trauma that they faced, they were still able to use their voice and get justice today.
How much of this is an issue locally?
So we see this quite often because we have a specialist project that supports women who've been affected by sexual exploitation. So for us it's quite common. However, locally it reflects the national picture as well, where we see perpetrators exploiting vulnerability through manipulation, control and violence. And this is something that can happen in any community. Trafficking and sexual exploitation doesn't just happen in big cities, it happens everywhere.
What warning signs are there for people who suspect that someone is being abused or groomed in this way?
So people who are exploited can sometimes present differently from their usual behaviour, so they may become more withdrawn, they may become avoidant, avoid questions, withdraw from family and friends. They may have a new partner, friend group that seems to control decision making, influence their finances, their movements. So anything like that might indicate that there might be some form of exploitation going on.
And can you tell me what support is available to people who have been affected by this issue?
So we have a specialist support project, especially for women who've experienced sexual exploitation and trafficking. We also have an advocacy service that can support anyone who's thinking of reporting to police and through that criminal justice system process. But we will provide one-to-one emotional and practical support and advocacy to women who experience sexual violence, and that can be it happening very recently, or it can be something that happened a long time ago, and there's no pressure from us to report. We will believe you and we will listen to you, and the support will be led by you.
That was Jenna Lawrence there speaking to our reporter Graham Ogston earlier today. Well, the sentencing of those gang members in Dundee comes at a time when the Scottish Prison Service has warned it has serious concerns about its ability to keep inmates safe. The population of Scotland's prisons has hit a new record high of 8,430. That means our jails are now holding 600 more people than they were designed for. As a result, MSPs are being urged to allow hundreds of prisoners out of jail early. The Scottish Government wants to release another 400 prisoners before the end of this year to ease overcrowding behind bars.
I acknowledge the critical risk that overcrowding presents. The Scottish Prison Service, Prison Governors Association and His Majesty's Inspectorate have laid out their concerns to me. That is why at the start of this month I put a set of proposals to Parliament. Parliament is still to decide on the next early emergency release proposals, which in my view are absolutely necessary to respond to the situation that we are currently in.
Well, earlier I spoke to Sarah Snell. She's the Chief Inspector of Prisons for Scotland, meaning she's responsible for making sure prisons here are well run. She says she's very worried about overcrowding, adding it could lead to more reoffending and that it's not only a danger to inmates but to staff as well.
It's really, really hard. They work from the minute they arrive on their shift to the end of their shift, sometimes beyond their shifts, trying to make sure that the basics are met, trying to make sure that everybody has food and clean water and access to fresh air. But many of them have joined with a belief that when people are incarcerated, they have a responsibility to introduce them to different ways of thinking, to build relationships, and all of that is compromised when the system is as overloaded as it is now.
Can that then have an impact on reoffending then, Sarah, if you're, as you're saying, inmates are not, getting the time that they maybe would if we didn't see prisons so over capacity as we are? Does that then have an impact after inmates are released?
Absolutely. I mean, it's really hard to go out into the community, particularly after a long sentence, but also on remand. Remand sort of truncates people's lives. They may lose jobs, they may lose accommodation, they may lose family, even when they're in on remand. And if you haven't had the opportunity to maybe learn new skills, increase your employability, if you haven't had time to plan, if your family haven't had time to plan for your return, but also I think the length of sentences now, because people can't access offending behaviour programmes in the way that they could, because people can't demonstrate that their risk is reduced in the way that perhaps they could previously. People are coming up for parole decisions and they almost feel like it's not worth being there because they know that they're going to get a knockback. So people are serving very long sentences, which that's hard. You get more fractured relationships. The community looks very different when you return to it, and of course that has a sort of vicious cycle of increasing the numbers in prison.
We have seen this year more than 300 people, half of whom were serving sentences for violent crimes, were freed in February and March. Did that not make any difference, this early release scheme? Is that easing the pressure at all?
It made spaces at the time, but it didn't deal with the underlying causes of overcrowding, which are complicated and which the Sentencing and Penal Policy Review will elucidate and hopefully make some suggestions about how community justice can be strengthened. For those reasons, obviously we've seen an increase in the remand population since COVID, and we're seeing people who are serving mini sentences, people who are in a year and a half, 2 years on remand, and all of those different aspects are adding to the overcrowding situation, and all of which require solutions and require cross-criminal justice solutions. It's not within the Scottish Prison Service's gift to solve this problem.
Sarah Snell, thank you very much for joining us on the programme and taking us through what is a very complex issue. We can really get a sense of that. Thank you very much for talking us through it. Billions of pounds of taxpayers' money has been squandered on asylum accommodation, according to a committee of Westminster MPs. It found that flawed contracts and incompetent delivery left the Home Office unable to cope with a surge in demand and relying on hotels as go-to solutions. The UK government says it's committed to ending the use of hotels by 2029. The committee also heard evidence that Glasgow is housing around 4 times as many asylum seekers as it should do under UK government plans. Our Westminster correspondent, Paris Gourtsianis, has been speaking to one of the Scottish MPs on the committee, Labour's Joni Reid.
This report is very critical of the system of asylum seeker accommodation. What struck you most from what you found?
The report that was published today lays bare the extent of the catastrophe that the Tories left the incoming Labour government. It failed on almost every possible measure. It has tripled in cost to the taxpayer, from 5 billion to about 15 billion over a 10-year period. It has created community tensions, and it has left asylum seekers in really quite dire accommodation.
And what needs to happen now? Should these contracts with private companies simply be abandoned?
One of the key recommendations included in the report is the break clause, which is up for renewal in 2026, so next year. The Home Affairs Select Committee is advising that the Home Office uses this as an opportunity to ensure that the contracts are more cost effective and that they deliver better services, not just for the asylum seekers but for communities on the whole.
Is that pledge to close all asylum seeker hotels realistic? What's the alternative?
There are a number of alternatives. Dispersal accommodation into the community is actually cheaper, but I met with the Home Secretary last week and they are looking in more detail at the large-scale sites, whether that's military barracks or other forms of accommodation.
Now, the numbers in asylum seeker hotels are falling, but this government's been in power now for a year and a half. Is enough being done? Is this happening quickly enough?
We have closed, the government has closed a number of asylum hotels. We're now processing asylum applications far quicker. Remember that they actually paused under the last government, which meant there were a number, hundreds of thousands of asylum seekers stuck in asylum hotels in our community. So we've got that process going again, and we've already saved £1 billion.
There's criticism in the report of the lack of coordination between the Home Office, private companies and local authorities that host asylum seekers. Glasgow has the highest asylum seeker population in the UK. It says it needs more support from the UK government. Shouldn't it get that?
So the report is clear that in Scotland we're hit by a double whammy. Firstly, the failures of the last Tory government, but those failures have been exacerbated by the SNP government. COSLA, that's the organisation that represents the councils across Scotland, and the councils themselves have said that there's been a lack of information and planning coming from the Scottish government, and that they haven't been seen as partners but rather been told what to do with very little notice and planning. So I think it's really important that the Scottish government does its bit in trying to improve the asylum accommodation and the asylum process.
Well, the Conservatives, in response to this report, say mistakes had been made under the previous Tory government, but also blamed the decision to scrap a plan to deport some asylum seekers to Rwanda. While the Scottish Government's Housing Secretary, Mary McCallan, says asylum seekers are not to blame for Scotland's housing crisis. Thanks very much for joining us on tonight's News at 7. We still have plenty more to come for you in the programme, including the charity who helped a group of beavers make Glen Affric their new home.
Still to come in the weather forecast, what does the last week of October have in store for us? Well, low pressure systems, that means rain at times, some sunshine too. All the details coming up later.
Now, organised crime in the High Street is the target of a major police crackdown in Scotland this month, with raids carried out earlier in Glasgow's East End. The National Crime Agency's operation Machanise aims to tackle businesses used as criminal fronts for money laundering, selling counterfeit tobacco and vapes, and exploiting vulnerable people for work.
It's a UK-wide operation into serious and organised crime, money laundering, targeting shops that would use cash, vape shops, barber shops, hairdressers, car washes. They use vulnerable people as staff, and we're looking to disrupt that.
Let's get a roundup then of some of the stories making the BBC News app in Scotland today. And energy services firm Petrofac, which employs about 2,000 people in Scotland, has filed for administration. The company says its North Sea business would continue to operate as normal. The body of a man who went overboard from the Gourock to Dunoon ferry 4 months ago has been found on an Argyll beach. There aren't thought to be any suspicious circumstances. A Great Britain surfing event in Caithness was postponed after female competitors, one of them aged 15, were allegedly verbally abused by a group of surfers not involved in the competition. Well, for more information on all of these stories, you can just simply scan the QR code on your screen. It will take you straight to the BBC Scotland News app. There is more for you there, including the landmark Glasgow Cinema, which is to reopen next year. Now, beavers have been legally reintroduced to a number of locations in Scotland in recent years, and now there is another. A family of 7 beavers has been released in the North West Highlands in Glenafric. It comes 400 years after their extinction in the area. There's been some opposition to all of this. They're sometimes blamed for damaging farmland. But earlier I spoke to the man who led the campaign to reintroduce the animals, Steve Micklewright. He's from the rewilding charity Trees for Life, and I asked him why it took 3 years to get them to Glenafric.
Started consulting with the public and landowners around Glenafric in August 2022. Then in response to that, we slightly changed our plans, took a few estates out of the proposal, and so went around again to speak to people. During that time, it sort of emerged that there were very deep concerns among farmers about the potential impacts of beavers on their land. So again, we took some more time to really understand what the concerns were and try to make sure that if anything did happen, we had all of the processes in place to deal with it, so things were going to be okay. So it took us a long time just to understand concerns and then ensure that going forward we can deal with them if they happen.
Why introduce beavers at all, Steve? What effects will they have on the local area?
So beavers are often called kind of ecosystem engineers. They change the environment around them. So they build dams, they hold back water, they create wetlands. They are great for biodiversity, for nature, because in wetlands you get more insect life, and with more insect life you get more fish, more birds, more nature. And also they're good for climate change because, as I say, they hold back water, and in periods of flood they can reduce flooding. In periods of drought they can hold water higher up to ensure that water comes down catchments more slowly. So they're generally very good for nature and climate, and that's why we love them so much.
As you said yourself, Steve, through the consultation process, you learned that not everyone is going to be supportive when it comes to this reintroduction of beavers. We can actually hear now a little clip from Robert MacDonald, who's a farmer from Granton and Spey, also the chairman of the Cairngorm Crofters and Farmers Community Group. We can hear what he thinks of this.
I do understand that there are people out there who are desperate to reintroduce beavers, and that is really all they live for. But consideration has to be given to the people who are already there and whose livelihoods are dependent on the ground that beavers would spoil.
So, Steve, what would your response be to somebody like Robert who is concerned about the reintroduction of beavers?
Yeah, in a very few circumstances, beavers can cause problems to farmland. We all acknowledge that. And we've all worked very hard in the conservation sector and among the farmers to ensure that where that is a problem, we can deal with it. And that's what we've done in Glenafric. So if there are any ever problems around Glenafric, we will deal with them. And in the Cairngorms, where Robert is, it's exactly the same. I'm on the board of the National Park, and the National Park has absolutely bent over backwards to ensure that if beavers ever cause problems for Robert or any other farmers in that area, that they will be dealt with quickly so that we can coexist with this animal, which we haven't had in Scotland for 400 years. And that's why it's so difficult. We're not used to having them around. So we're not used to adapting so that they can live with us and we can live with them.
What are your hopes for the future of beaver reintroduction across other parts of Scotland potentially?
Well, I hope that in time we'll learn to live with beavers. We'll learn to celebrate the benefits that they give to nature, how they help with climate, and how they are just these fantastic animals that shape the world around them and make it better for nature more generally. So I'm hoping that it becomes quite normal to hear of beavers being released in other parts of Scotland and even in the central belt, in and around Edinburgh, for example.
Steve Micklewright, thank you very much for joining us. I'm sure we'll be back chatting to you to find out exactly how the reintroduction of the programme has gone. Thank you.
Thanks.
Still to come, we will see how the weather is looking with Christopher. But before that, it is sport time with Lewis. And Lewis, it's a very good time to be a Hearts fan, isn't it?
It certainly is, Amy. I don't know what's a bigger talking point today, Beavers or Heart of Midlothian, and I tell you, it's all about Hearts in the sport tonight. Good evening. 40 years it's been since a club other than Celtic or Rangers last won the Scottish top flight, and 65 years since Hearts themselves secured that title. But after beating the defending champions on Sunday, many are starting to believe Derek McInnes's side have what it takes to win the league. That is because the statement victory at Tynecastle has them 8 points clear of Celtic, albeit with 29 Premiership matches still to play. Earlier though, I asked Barry Anderson, who's the Hearts correspondent at Edinburgh Evening News, what he makes of their title chances.
You know, Hearts last year struggled for a result against any of the top 5 teams, and now they've beaten all of them, Celtic being the last of the 5, as it were. So when you're beating all of the top 5, and you know, one after the other, obviously it lends itself to people saying that Hearts are going to be challenging for this title. And naturally, nobody wants to get carried away, but you look at the team and you look at the performances that they're putting in, the goals they're scoring, at the same time not conceding very many. So there's a lot of things that are coming together at the moment, and you can understand why Hearts fans are determined to enjoy it.
Absolutely. The supporters are entitled to get a little bit carried away, aren't they? But all the more when you look at the stats a little bit more, the 8-point gap is obviously clear to see, but the most goals scored in the league, the best defence in the league. You'll have covered a lot of press conferences this season, Barry. What's Derek McInnes been like when these questions are put to him? He's cool and calm and collected, isn't he? But has he shown any hint of getting excited himself?
No, not yet. He's absolutely determined to keep a lid on things and keep people calm and not allow anybody to get carried away. I don't think there's any likelihood of that within the dressing room anyway. You know, Hearts as a club will obviously be taking this one step at a time.
You look at the next spell that they have coming up, a trip to St Mirren, certainly not easy, is it? Then they've got the Dundee clubs back-to-back at Tynecastle before trips to Pittodrie and Fir Park. So difficult games before we even get into that busy December period. So it is still so early. But if they get through that next run, it looks pretty rosy for them, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The challenge that they've got every week will be with themselves as much as the opponents. It'll be the challenge of staying focused, maintaining momentum, maintaining the camaraderie, and as well obviously dealing with the actual opponent at each time. I don't think that we're far too early here at 9 games into the season. It's far too early to say, yes, Hearts are going to win the title. I don't think anybody's daft enough to say that. But you would look at their team and the way the team's playing, the strength that they have in every position, and you'd have to say that they certainly have the credentials to mount a challenge for it.
Barry Anderson from the Edinburgh Evening News there. Now, it was also a wonderful weekend for Falkirk defender Connor Allen, who scored an 89th minute winner against Dundee to give the 6th placed Bairns their first home win in the Premiership this season. And it wasn't just any old goal. As you can see here, add the fact that the 21-year-old had been drafted in to cover an injury crisis in defence, and this was his first ever Premiership start. Kenny Crawford found out how much it meant to him.
Yeah, what a moment. It was a brilliant win for the team, and to get that goal just topped off a really good day.
What on earth were you doing flying forward like that?
I'm not quite sure. In all honesty, I picked up the ball and I just kept driving with it, and it just all opened up for me, and I managed to slot it into the net.
A lot of people were saying, we're down to the bare bones in defence, but were you just kind of thinking, calm it, I've got this under control?
I feel like I can always help the team out. I feel like at centre back, whether it's in centre mid, whether it's in, I can play right back as well. Like, I can play a lot of positions, and hopefully I can keep going and progressing forward.
This could turn out to be a key day for you in your career. You've obviously had the upbringing, so to speak, at Rangers, and then that experience at Kelty Hearts as well, and now you're really wanting to stake a claim in a first team place here now.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to keep pushing on, keep trying to get more and more appearances in the Premiership, and establish my name.
What did John McGlynn say to you after the game?
I was just buzzing. He didn't know what I was doing up there, in all honesty. But he knows what I can do. I can play in midfield, I can do driving forward, and I don't know, probably was a bit surprised, in all honesty.
And did you have anyone in terms of family, friends there to watch that significant moment in your career?
Yeah, my mum, my dad and my granddad and my wee brother. They've been home and away since I can remember, so I thank them for everything they do for me.
And as always, there's lots more to read and watch on the BBC Sports Scotland website for you, including a piece on new Aberdeen sporting director Lutz Fan and Steel and his rather unusual background. No spoilers there, Amy, but it is absolutely fascinating. He's been in prison. That's one of the many stories involving him.
The headline I saw was he stole a penguin.
That's correct as well.
If that doesn't make you want to click on that article, I don't know what will.
That lures you right in.
Thank you very much, Lewis, as always. Well, before we go, Halloween is fast approaching. This weekend, many of us will be dressing up and going guising, but the celebrations have started early in Glasgow. Last night was the annual Battlefield Lantern Parade. Hundreds of people took part in the hour-long procession through the Southside neighbourhood, and hundreds more lined up to watch, despite the rain. The event's been running since 2009, organised by the volunteers of the Battlefield Community Project. This year it featured Mexican dancers to celebrate similarities between the Scottish tradition of Halloween and the Mexican Day of the Dead. Well, yes, it was very miserable last night. Rain teeming down in many places. What's that actually going to look like for going out guising though, Christopher? Is it getting better this week?
Not really. We will do a proper guising forecast later in the week, but unsettle, prepare for everything, which is always good advice, isn't it, for Scottish weather. But today we had some lovely autumnal sunshine around, some sharp showers off the north coast there of Caithness, sunshine in Aberdeenshire and also through parts of Fife. But there is some rain on the way. Let me show you what's happening over the next few days, because we've got the jet stream running right across the UK like that, and that it will help deliver areas of low pressure to our shores. It's high-level winds way up in the atmosphere, and they help sort of direct low pressure towards us. At the end of the week, it dips to the south, and that could spin up a deep area of low pressure for Friday, but more on that in a second. This is first thing tomorrow. It's a cloudier start to the day compared with this morning, and through much of the central lowlands we've got a zone of sort of showery rain, and that will be with us throughout the course of the day. Further north it's cloudy with some outbreaks of rain in towards the Moray Firth there. A little bit of brightness towards the Lewis and Harris, the far north of Caithness and Sutherland, and showers across Orkney and Shetland. Not as windy in the Northern Isles as it was today. Now, through the course of Tuesday, we'll hold on to that showery zone through central and southern parts. Temperatures 7 to 12 Celsius north to south. Looking ahead to Wednesday, there's that area of low pressure moving its way eastward, so there will be outbreaks of rain or showers at times, something brighter in between. So on Wednesday, we've got a zone of showers across the far north and Northern Isles, and then another through west central Scotland, Argyll in towards the Highlands, driest and brightest the further east you are. Once again, temperatures 7 to 10 Celsius, so a touch cooler compared with tomorrow. And then to Thursday, actually a decent day of weather, dry and bright. Early mist and fog will lift, and then the cloud builds, and you can see the rain arriving. That area of low pressure I mentioned spinning its way up. So as we go through towards Friday, you can see a large area of low pressure is set to take over for Friday, Saturday and Sunday, so that will be fairly unsettled. This is the picture on Saturday. Outbreaks of rain working their way on Friday. Outbreaks of rain working their way northwards. Something brighter behind with a few showers. So all to play for Friday night. And then into the weekend, you can see that low pressure anchored towards the northwest, sending outbreaks of rain and showers our way. Windy from the southwest, but nothing desperately cold. Temperatures at least in double digits. But you can see on the outlook, it is rather unsettled. Rain at times, but some sunshine in the mix as well. That's the forecast for now.
I've learned by now, Christopher, just to trust you when you say plan for everything, because we really are getting all this week.
It's good advice, I would say.
Yes, thank you very much. And thanks to you for joining us. That is all from the news at 17 on the programme. We'll be back same time, same place tomorrow. Whatever you're doing, enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.